My paper is on embedding critical thinking in academic writing skills classes, and this is a case study of multicultural students. It was supposed to be presented in the International Education 2021 Symposium, but unfortunately I couldn't due to technical issues. So I'm recording it now, and I would really hope that I can receive your feedback on it. My name is Ajrina Hysaj, and I teach at University of Wollongong in Dubai. This study is, the focus of the study was to analyze the development of critical thinking in multicultural students. The UAE is home to some over 108 nationalities, and in our university we have over 100 nationalities. So the development of critical thinking in multicultural students of different nationalities who come from different who have studied different curriculums, it's very important, and especially when we're talking about the online platform, which in itself adds to the challenges of education, higher education. Now, this study will analyze the breakout sessions and the discussion forums and their impact on the development of critical thinking in multicultural students. For this specific study, I have analyzed academic writing skills because a lot of critical thinking gets developed in these writing skills. So, as I mentioned, the multicultural students in the UAE are very much an integral part of the society, and they are by far outnumbering the number of the local students in the UAE and in our institution. But that's a general thing, that the foreigners outnumber the number of local students in the UAE as a whole. Now, the impact of discussion sessions and the development of critical thinking in multicultural students is quite important to be understood. So we as lecturers understand what to use in the online platform and what is more appropriate for the development of critical thinking. The study used a qualitative data analysis, with the focus being changes that happened in the multicultural students' worldviews. The worldviews are generally very difficult to be developed, and as I mentioned, because students come from certain cultures or any culture, it's not always an easy task to accept other people's viewpoints. So that's sort of brainstorming and analyzing about accepting and tolerating other people's worldviews is something very important that needs to develop, and the critical thinking helps with it. And obviously this can be done in the academic studies skills classes or academic writing. Generally, monolingual or monocultural students do not necessarily possess the free thinking, and may tend to conform to the views of a certain category of people or a certain nation, and that is something to be accepted and expected. Nevertheless, we as educators need to find ways of developing their critical and analytical thinking, as well as the application of the same with a complex form of vocabulary and language. As much as our students are able to develop critical thinking, they would be able to develop their writing skills as well, and their vocabulary and language. Now, critical thinking is a metacognitive process, and it takes time to develop, but obviously it has to be developed through the purpose-driven activities. Self-reflection is another very important factor that can help with the development of critical thinking, creation of inferences, evaluation of facts, and evaluation of opinions, consideration of opinions or not. And more than that, the critical thinking gets developed when there is a genuine disposition to utilize thinking and understand the ways the problems can be resolved, and of course understand the problems itself first. Obviously, the external sources that educators may use to develop these skills and skills of critical thinking are very substantial for the progression of the students in their higher education. Generally, the academic studies skills classes or academic writing skills classes are taken in the first years of university. So those years are very critical for the development of an understanding of other people's worldviews and their way of thinking. So in academic study skills classes, the definition of critical thinking has to do with the way the thoughts are processed during the sessions, but to help students with the development of critical thinking, we need to create an alignment of the curriculum that is aligned with the online tasks. There is no purpose of having an online task that does not help students with development of critical thinking, and of course there is no purpose of having an online task that does not connect with the assessment tasks. So the alignment of the alignment of the tasks that are given in class, the assessments, and obviously the linking bridge between them should be the development of critical thinking. Obviously, critical thinking is not an innate characteristic of humans. It's something that humans need to develop, and it needs a lot of nourishment and thoughtful enrichment. University, or early years of universities, are a good time to develop the critical thinking, and those are the years when students are still maybe even confused about their presence in university, and students at the same time are eager to be involved. So is the time when they can take in a lot of information, and at the same time they can alter their own world. So the diversity of worldviews is something very important to be understood, and the online discussion boards that I used were for this purpose. So since the critical thinking is a higher order thinking skill, it has to be developed through curriculum design and online activities. So discussion forums can be considered as one way of developing critical thinking, because they are a combination of the writing skills, of thinking skills, and at the same time reflecting skills. So all of these are elements of critical thinking. Now, the diversification of ideas of multicultural students is something very fascinating, which has always fascinated me in the world during the classroom environment, because they come from different nations, and because they come from different nations, the way of perceiving things is very different. Nevertheless, it is very important that these perceived ideas are analyzed by many students and are analyzed by them all, and at the same time they are accepted or tolerated by all. Obviously, if this happens and if this occurs in the classroom is wonderful, but when we are in the online platform, the only way that I could possibly see this develop was through the discussion forums, which could be an open platform to allow students to elaborate on their own thoughts and research prior to uploading information, or uploading or writing down their thoughts. Obviously, we live in a globalized world, and we have globalized education systems. There is very less that we can do to create a way of aligning the curriculums all across the world. But at least we can try to align the way that our students develop their critical thinking in our classroom. So to explore the diversity of this, of the students, one very important thing is the adaptation of classroom management and improved curriculum alignment. And obviously, if this occurs, then the students will have the tendency to alter their own thoughts and accept other people's worldviews. Obviously, this is not going to come easy. Some students, or maybe all, may be focused in their own way of seeing the world and may resist. Nevertheless, in this case, that wasn't the case at all. All the students involved in the study were very open to acceptance of other people's worldviews, and this basically is something very substantial, because one of the components of acquisition of a language, of a second language, is through critical and analytical thinking. So that as a process is substantial for the language development itself. And that's a win-win situation in academic study skills. Now, the method of study that the method of collecting and analyzing the data, as I mentioned, was a mixed method. They were both qualitative, but it was a mixed method. So there were the discussion forums, and parallel to the discussion forums were the reflective tasks. The students themselves worked in breakout sessions, and the focus was to analyze culture and its implications for identity. This itself allowed students to point out their viewpoints on their own cultures. Students had to discuss their own cultures, and they had to explain their own cultures, and then as a group look for similarities and differences between the cultures. The sample size was not big, it was 30 students who were enrolled in an undergraduate program in an international university in the UAE. As I mentioned, universities in the UAE have a high number of multicultural students, so it's quite easy to conduct students for international students. Now, the second thing that happened was the reflective task or the discussion forums. After completing the group project, which required from students to collaborate in breakout sessions and negotiate the thought, decide on what to include and what not to include in the group work, then obviously look into the similarities and differences of their individual cultures and negotiate the thought, accept the thoughts of the others. They eventually had to reflect on their discussion boards, and the reflection on the discussion board was addressing two issues: the issue of working in a group through the online platform and reflecting on cultures through the online. The overall results of the discussion of the collaboration in breakout sessions and in discussion forums proved to be very interactive and very engaging, which adds into the value of active learning. It was a very interactive learning, actually, because students were very comfortable discussing their cultures with other students. It's important to be mentioned that this may have, the fact that they were online may have been an added value to this discussion. However, is still to be analyzed the reaction of the same students in the face-to-face classrooms. So in the online platform, the discussion, the breakout sessions proved to be very interactive, and a lot of those thoughts came then forward in the reflection tasks, and they helped the students themselves analyze their own understanding of cultures and their own understanding of other people's cultures. The students' reflective tasks were highly positive. The overall thoughts of the students were that exploration of cultures was interesting, and it didn't clash with their own self-identity or self-worthness. And while opposite, it helped them explore something which they wouldn't have explored otherwise. Now, the qualitative data that was gathered by the reflective task was addressing the issue of academic performance as well, and so how much academically the students were happy or were engaged in the process, and the personal satisfaction. The reason being is that critical thinking cannot be developed. As I said, is a high order of thinking skill, so it needs to develop through the reflection, but at the same time, the cognitive work has an impact on it, and that's how the acceptance of other people's viewpoint comes into presence. The most important thing is that students highlighted the need to implement multicultural group work in discipline-related subjects, which was something very interesting, because priorly I would have thought that students would like to work with people who are from their own culture, rather than having to explore another culture. Nevertheless, apparently, from this study, they really enjoyed working with other cultures, and the majority of them thought that working with other cultures helped them and would help them. It helped them in this specific project, but it would help them in discipline-related subjects. which is very interesting because in discipline-related subjects there may be an issue with the language acquisition, but according to the students, it doesn't really seem to disturb them, and quite the opposite, it helps them with understanding. A very important thing that needs to happen in academic studies classes is that the work has to be submitted on time, and obviously the thoughts have to be well organized, and the reflective task should have the structure of the reflective task, with the reflection being a the reflection being a very important factor of the content. The self-constructive experience of the international students help them through the learning and the collaboration, help them to even internalize their thoughts and process the thoughts in such a way that the others, in this case myself or their peers, could understand and could reflect upon. So the discussion to move forward. This study revealed that the multicultural students learn from each other, or international students learn from their collaboration. But this is something which still needs to be explored because, the opposite is overwhelmingly perceived, that the international students will have problems in working in groups. So a similar study has to be done in a classroom, and where students are physically in physical space, and then both studies need to be compared. Obviously, this cannot be happened. The study could not occur without allowing the international students to be part of the curriculum design and to be part of the group work. So adjustment of the curriculum design is the first step really towards catering to the needs of international students. Obviously, the processes of self-awareness, self-reflection, self-identity came along this project, and they in themselves are lifelong processes and are influenced by a whole range of reasons. So one of them could be the critical and development thinking, but obviously there are many other reasons that can help our students with self-reflection and self-identity. Obviously, without self-identity, we do not have students who have good understanding of themselves, and that would mean that we don't have critical thinkers and analytical thinkers. Without having critical thinkers and analytical thinkers, our possibilities of having students who would be able to conduct research and bond with the matter that they are analyzing is very limited. So to us as educators, it's very important to develop those skills and understand the variety of ways that we can use to develop this. One thing, though, that was noticed in the study was that some students were just not ready to study online, and this is the same. This is the same thing that was has been analyzed by other studies. Obviously, this did not. This specific study was not at a large scale, but it's still an issue that students explained in their reflective task. So one way that this could be handled in the online platform is the provision of badges for students to cultivate that kind of active online engagement. Now, obviously, badges will not work for all the students, but nevertheless, they could work for a large majority of students. And as I said, that in this specific project, not many of them had the issue. So if we could provide something extra to what was already provided, the changes in the curriculum, that would be a positive factor towards having an increased level of engagement. The presence, active learning is very important, and especially the reflective learning is very important, and these are substantial skills for our students, not only in academic studies classes, not only for development of critical thinking, but in general for their presence in university and for their well-being in university, and of course their academic. The diversity, to finish the discussion, the diversity has decreased. The diversity is seen to decrease or decrease the amount of bias that students may have, and that in itself will help with negotiating the thought and developing the sets of skills which were not there prior to work. As a conclusion, the development, the group work has an impact of academic and personality nature, and it helps with active engagement, it helps with creation of inclusiveness for multicultural students, and it empowers students with pragmatic decisions, so they will eventually use these experiences in their work environment in the and that is the list of the rest. And I really hope that I get feedback on this presentation. So that was the presentation on the multicultural students' perspectives, the development of critical thinking and analytical thinking in academic study skills by myself, Ajrina Hysaj. Thank you.